I'd like to talk about Laird Barron right now. Laird Barron is a horror writer, magnificent horror writer, at least in his earlier work. And if you are a horror literature fan, you should definitely, if you haven't yet, you should definitely dig Laird Barron's work, such as Imago Sequence, Occultation, The Beautiful Thing That Awaits Us All, The Croning, a beautiful, beautiful, extremely fun, extremely literary novel. And that's what brought Laird Barron to prominence is basically two things. Is how high a literature his stuff is. His prose is meticulous. It's very artful. He's very knowledgeable. He's the guy who has read the best of the best and learned from them. Um, and second thing, his horror, his vein of horror, his taste for horror goes beyond Lovecraft and the forefathers of weird fiction. He really broke new ground. He really, expanded the horror palette, if you want. So that was until he suddenly kind of fell in love with pulp. At least that's what it feels like. Because his late work, such as X's for Eyes and some of his recent stories interspersed in this collection or that, they show a completely different vein and mood and taste of horror. Because all of a sudden, gone is the artful and meticulous and sharp prose. It's gone. Suddenly, what you have is some kind of jovial, brand of pulp fiction, which is it doesn't show that much care for choice of words that you probably have accustomed to if you're a fan of Laird Barron, and it's really alienating for me as a horror fan because this kind of pulp fiction that you have in the recent Laird Barron's work is it's not that immersive anymore. It has this constant brouhaha element, like everything that's happening is happening for a laugh or for laughs or for I don't know some cheap entertainment. It doesn't raise any hair-raising questions about the nature of reality and if there is a dark force behind stuff that's happening in the work like X's for Eyes, its appearance and I I, I even I find it hard even to recollect what was that, and yeah, I can remember what was some of the horror moments in X's for Eyes, but they were so far and in between, you know, and that comes from the same writer who wrote Hallucigenia for God's sakes. And if you don't know that story, it's a long, big chunk of story from one of his earlier collections. And that's a completely different thing. It's a mind blowing piece of prose that will remain for you for the rest of your life. It will never you'll never forget it. You will reread it times and times again, like I do, for instance. I reread all of the earlier Laird Barron's work, well, on a regular basis, almost every year. So, and then the second vein that Laird Barron got into recently, it's like pure noir detective, crime stories, like The Man with No Name, his recent novel about some Yakuza, mafia mobster who's gone rogue on the Yakuza themselves. And yeah, it's a sort of yeah, you can feel it that it's Laird Barron. And there's even a very small element of horror to it, very small though. And because of that, for the horror fan like myself, a literature fan rather, not horror in life, as a horror literature fan, um, I don't find it intriguing, entertaining, or even interesting. Because, you know, dark noir detective crime novels, they, a stack, if they put in a stack, it will reach, Venus or something. Because there's no shortage of that stuff. You can read crime novels of any kind. You can find them on Amazon, on Kindle, in your bookstore of any kind for any taste. So you can feel that the author himself, Laird Barron, really has a blast writing all that stuff, all that recent, pulp fiction and crime novels, noir crime novels. He enjoys doing that. For obviously, you can feel it from the prose. It's he's having a blast, but sadly, for a horror fan, that's not much of a blast at all. So his new crime novel, The Blood Standard, which is slated for release in May. That's one thing that I don't realize, that I don't understand about book publishing. Why does it take so long? The book's written, it's there, and then the author posts, yeah, a pre-release, announcement. Here we go. There's another book of me which is late for release. When? No, not tomorrow, not the other month. In 6 months or in a year. Why? For what reason? Do you have to like physically cut the trees and make the paper pulp and then, make these paper sheets, cut them, and then manually, write the script on those sheets? Or what the fuck is this great time lapse between the announcement and the actual release? Vinyl pressings are done quicker than book pressings, and then you have electronic books. Why is the wait? Is there something, I don't know. So anyway, another crime novel of his is slated for release in May, and it's The Blood Standard. And again, from the announcement itself, you can see that there will be no horror there. It'll be just your standard noir crime novel about some guy who's been, torn apart by forces that be, his, criminal gang or something, and then probably some profound questions with a little bit of psychedelia, dark psychedelia thrown in here and there. Well, most probably because I don't think Laird Barron would like to totally alienate his horror fans by completely forgetting about the horror premise. Well, but then again, I don't think it's going to be something that's a lot different from the Men with No Name about the Nanashi Yakuza guy. And sadly, the Nanashi guy doesn't quite stand out in the memory afterwards, after you read the work, like Hallucigenia, for instance, or The Croning. The Croning, I mean, I still cannot believe that the Nashi novel is written by the same guy who wrote The Croning, for God's sakes. Man, how did that happen? I don't know. Well, God bless Laird Barron anyway. I'm happy that this writer exists in our time, and there's still hope that he will regain his interest in horror and weird fiction. And hopefully he will release some work in the future which will, be on par with the accolades of his past. Well, the last story that really shows you the great Laird Barron as a horror master, as a weird fiction master, was Blood and Stardust as a short companion story to the Nanashi novel, The Man with No Name, unrelated to the story completely, but still thrown in as a bonus material. And gosh, I was so happy it was there as a bonus material because it really made up for the time that I spent reading the Nanashi novel, which wasn't a page turner by no means, for me at least. I'm not a fan of crime fiction. So that would be like Joanne Rowling, suddenly in the middle of the Harry Potter saga, losing all her interest in the Harry Potter and turning to, I don't know, some Jackie Chan type Chinese kung fu drama thing or something, and it would be like, what, why? So luckily for Harry Potter fans, Joanne Rowling was firmly lodged between contractual obligations to deliver on the subsequent novels. So with Laird Barron, it remains for us, for weird horror fans of literature, to, well, hopefully expect some great stuff in the future from Laird Barron. Something that will be, as I said, on par with Imago Sequence, The Occultation, and, well, he's really cool, really awesome, weird horror fiction. So that was my short review on Laird Barron. Thank you for watching.